This is Baalbek in the Lebanon. Each of these 3 blocks weighs 900 tons.
Like, what is the weight of that? What's the overall weight?
That's 1.7 million pounds.
3 limestone blocks, each weighing 800 tons, suspended 20 feet in the air. Baalbek's surface features a stunning 2,000-year-old Roman temple. But the real mystery is buried underneath. And this mystery predates the Romans.
You don't see the Roman foot in those stones, which is weird. You would expect to see some sort of breakdown of the Roman foot in these measurements, but they're not there at Baalbek.
We believe this was the work of an unknown ancient civilization that laid the groundwork for the sacred site, engineering monoliths so massive that historians, engineers, and researchers have been arguing over them for generations. They can't replicate it because they're still far from understanding it. How did ancient builders extract, transport, and perfectly elevate these giant structures? The answer will change everything you thought you knew about Lebanon's Beqaa Valley. The ancient city built on something older. Before Baalbek became one of the most confusing ancient sites on Earth, it was already sitting in a place people treated as sacred. The city sits in Lebanon's Beqaa Valley, surrounded by mountains, open land, and ancient routes that once connected different parts of the region. The location was not random. Baalbek was positioned in a place where power, religion, and movement all came together. By the time the Romans arrived, they did what Rome always did best. They took something important and made it enormous. They transformed Baalbek into Heliopolis, the city of the sun, and built one of the grandest temple complexes in the Roman world. The site included temples dedicated to Jupiter, Bacchus, and Venus, with columns so tall they still dominate the ruins today. Everything about the complex was designed to overwhelm people before they even understood what they were looking at. And that was the point. Baalbek was built to make visitors feel small. The columns rose above them. The stairways pulled them upward. The walls created the feeling that this was a place closer to the gods than to normal human life. But the strangest part is that the Roman temples may only be the layer everyone notices first. Because underneath all that carved beauty was the foundation. And that foundation is where the questions surrounding Baalbek begin. The Romans were master builders. But even by Roman standards, the platform beneath Baalbek feels excessive. The stones used there were so large that they did not simply support the temple. They became the mystery holding the entire site up. And to understand why this place still makes people argue today, you have to look at the blocks hidden inside the platform. The platform that should not feel this heavy. Beneath the Temple of Jupiter sits a massive stone base, and built into that base are 3 blocks that have become the center of the entire Baalbek mystery. They are known as the Trilithon, and the name sounds almost too simple for what they actually are. They were enormous limestone blocks, each estimated to weigh hundreds of tons, placed high in the retaining wall like the builders were treating impossible weight as a normal construction material. And this is where the story starts to feel uncomfortable, because moving heavy stones is never just a single challenge. There are several problems stacked on top of each other. First, the builders had to cut the blocks from the quarry without breaking them. Then they had to separate them from the bedrock. Then they had to move them across uneven land. Then they had to raise them into position. And finally, they had to fit them into the wall with enough precision that the entire platform could carry one of the largest temples in the Roman world. Every step could have, and by all research, should have gone wrong. Yet somehow, these stones ended up in the wall. That is why Baalbek has become such a magnet for theories. To archaeologists, the Trilithon shows the ambition and technical ability of Roman builders. To alternative researchers, it looks like evidence that the site may hold an older secret, or that ancient builders had methods we no longer fully understand. And standing in front of those blocks, it is easy to understand why people argue, because the official explanation may be possible, but possible does not mean easy. Even today, with all our machines, recreating the same process under ancient conditions would be brutal. All they had was stone, wood, rope, manpower, planning, and a lot of confidence to work with. But what makes this discovery even crazier is that the blocks in the platform may not even be the largest stones connected to Baalbek. For that, you have to leave the temple behind and go to the quarry. The quarry where the mystery got worse. In the ancient quarry near Baalbek, there is a massive limestone block known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. Even the name sounds strange, but the stone itself is stranger. It sits partly exposed in the earth, carved from the bedrock, shaped into a clean rectangular block, and abandoned before it ever reached the temple platform. For a long time, this stone was treated as one of the largest ancient blocks ever cut by human hands. And even standing near it today, it does not look like a normal building material. It looks like someone tried to carve a piece of the mountain itself and turn it into a single stone. The quarry proves the builders were not accidentally working at this scale. They were not dragging whatever loose stones they could find. They were deliberately cutting blocks so huge that even preparing them would have required careful planning. Archaeologists later identified other unfinished stones in the same quarry area, including blocks that may have been even larger than the famous Stone of the Pregnant Woman. That discovery alone changed the way people looked at Baalbek, because it showed that the massive stones in the temple platform were not some one-time experiment. The builders were thinking bigger. But that creates an obvious problem. If the stones already placed in the wall were difficult to explain, what were these larger stones meant for? And why were they left there? Some explanations are practical. Maybe the stones cracked. Maybe the builders discovered flaws in the limestone. Maybe the project changed, the work stopped, or the blocks became too risky to move. But even those explanations leave one uncomfortable truth behind. Someone believed these stones were worth attempting. If the Trilithon shows what Baalbek's builders managed to place, the quarry shows what they were prepared to attempt. But that leads to another question. How were they planning to move them at all? What mainstream archaeology actually says. As strange as Baalbek looks, the official explanation does not begin with aliens, vanished machines, or some forbidden civilization erased from history. It begins with engineering. Most archaeologists connect the major construction at Baalbek to the Roman period, when the city was transformed into Heliopolis, one of the empire's most important religious centers in the region. And if there was one thing Rome knew how to do, it was to turn architecture into a statement. The Romans built roads across continents. They raised aqueducts through valleys. They moved armies, materials, and stone across impossible distances. So, when experts look at Baalbek, they usually see a massive but human project. Difficult, dangerous, and expensive? Yes, but not magic. The basic explanation is that the stones were quarried nearby, then moved using ramps, sledges, rollers, capstans, pulleys, and huge teams of workers. Instead of lifting every block straight into the air, builders may have dragged them along prepared paths, raised them gradually with packed earth ramps, and used careful leverage to position them onto the platform. That sounds simple when you say it quickly, but it becomes much harder when you imagine actually doing it. Every rope had to hold, every surface had to be prepared, every worker had to move in rhythm. Every mistake could damage a stone so heavy that replacing it could mean starting again from the quarry. The mainstream explanation tells us the methods were possible. It does not make the achievement feel normal. Ancient builders did not need modern engines to do astonishing work, but they did need a lot of discipline, planning, experience, and an almost ridiculous amount of labor. One of the main theories is that it was built with something modern people underestimate even more: time, manpower, and a civilization willing to spend both on a scale that almost feels insane. But if the Romans had the ability to build the platform, were they creating it from nothing? Or were they expanding a sacred site that was already much older? The real age. This is where Baalbek becomes more than an engineering mystery. The temples everyone sees today are Roman. The columns, the courtyards, the carvings, and the scale of the sanctuary all fit the world of imperial Rome. That part of the story is not really the problem. It's what the Romans may have been building on top of. Long before Rome turned Baalbek into Heliopolis, the site already carried religious weight in the region. The Romans had a habit of absorbing older sacred places and rebuilding them in their own image. They did not always erase what came before. Sometimes they buried it under something bigger. Some researchers believe the massive platform was entirely Roman, built as part of the temple complex. Others think the Romans may have expanded or adapted an older sacred foundation that already existed before they arrived. Baalbek isn't mysterious because there is no explanation, but because there are too many layers sitting on top of each other. A sacred landscape, an older tradition, a Roman Empire trying to display power, and stones so massive they make every explanation feel slightly incomplete. And if that is true, then Baalbek was not just built upward, it was built over time, with each civilization adding weight to a place that already felt impossible to leave alone. The real mystery was human ambition. At a certain point, Baalbek stops being a question about stone and starts becoming a question about people. Because no one builds something like this by accident. The entire site was designed to overwhelm. The platform was massive. The temples were massive. The columns were massive. Even the approach to the sanctuary seems to have been built around one feeling, making anyone who entered understand that they were standing in front of something larger than normal human life. That was the power of Baalbek. It did not need to explain itself. It made people feel the answer before they ever reached the temple steps. In the ancient world, size was never just size. A giant structure was a message. It told visitors that the gods were powerful, the empire was powerful, and the people who controlled this place had resources most others could never imagine. And that may be why the builders were willing to push so far. They were not simply trying to make a functional building. They were trying to create a place that felt untouchable, a place where religion, empire, and engineering all came together in one overwhelming display. Even if every stone can be explained by Roman engineering, ramps, labor, and planning, the ambition behind it still feels almost unreasonable. Someone looked at a sacred site in the mountains of Lebanon and decided it deserved stones so large that thousands of years later, people would still argue about how they got there. And in a strange way, they were right, because the temples are ruined now. The empire that helped build them is gone, and the rituals that once filled the courtyards have disappeared. But the foundation remains, and the stones are still doing exactly what they were meant to do. They still make modern viewers wonder how much the ancient world actually knew. Baalbek survives because it refuses to feel small. Even broken, even weathered, even stripped of its original purpose, it still carries the weight of a civilization that wanted to leave something behind so massive that time itself would struggle to erase it. And that may be the real reason this place still feels impossible. Not because ancient builders broke the laws of physics, but because they understood something that modern people keep forgetting. They knew that if you build something large enough, precise enough, and strange enough, future generations will not simply study it. They will question themselves in front of it,